Hey, have you been seeing those TikToks and YouTube videos talking about how like Gen Alpha can't read and like isn't on grade level for anything? Don't worry about that. The kids are all right. Yeah, I thought so too. But then I saw something on the news about like how like the new president is planning to get rid of the Department of Education. I don't really know what that means. Maybe then the kids aren't all right? Yeah. Hey guys, what's up? It's Imurgency and welcome back to my channel. And today we need to talk about something a little serious. And that, my friends, is that Generation Alpha and also the youngest of Gen Z, basically anyone under the age of 18 right now, are about to become the targets of an already failing education system, becoming even worse, which is inevitably going to have a ripple effect for generations to come. Now you may be asking, Rumi, what are you talking about? And to that I say, now it's no secret that education and the quality of education is instrumental to the mental, emotional, and physical development of young people, and is oftentimes an indicator and a benchmark of later in life success and opportunity. And it is also no surprise that as of recently, the quality of education has been under fire and has been under a lot of questioning and scrutiny over the past couple of years due to conversations online surrounding the declining literacy rates and comprehension skills of young people like Gen Alpha and the very youngest of Gen Z, with teachers and parents alike coming forward online to express their concerns that their kids just aren't performing on grade level, and in fact are performing multiple grade levels behind where they should be. And if you want to hear more about that specifically, I made a whole video addressing the issues with education for Gen Z and Gen Alpha for the current day. In this video though, I want to talk a little bit about the future. I know, spooky, scary, but no, actually, because based on what's been going on with the country politically, with the re-election of Donald Trump and the recent picks for his cabinet, especially for the education secretary, alarm bells are going off because this could possibly spell the end, or at least a massive disruption to the quality and consistency of education in America for young people for years to come. And in this video, we'll be talking a little bit about why that is, what's going on with the current state of education, what allegedly is coming down the pipeline for education from this new administration, and of course, talking about how this is all impacting not only just Gen Alpha, but Gen Z as well. This is something that you're definitely not going to want to miss, so make sure to leave a like on this video if you haven't already, and if you are new to the channel, then definitely subscribe. My socials on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter are also listed right here. But before we get into all that, would you consider yourself a curious person? And would you consider yourself someone that likes convenience? Because personally, I'm both of those things. And that's why I'm excited to talk about this video sponsor, Perplexity. Perplexity is an answer engine that searches the internet in real time to give you fast, clear answers, explained in everyday language that's easy to understand with sources and citations. I've been using Perplexity recently for a myriad of things, whether that be really niche use cases like using it to help research for videos like this, given that it provides you cited sources for the information that it pulls, which is so helpful. It's also more broadly and arguably more usefully used for things like shopping. And Perplexity is the best and easiest way to shop, helping you easily compare products and get gift ideas from complex searches, and then even letting you make those purchases by tapping buy directly on the app. Especially with Black Friday and the rest of the holiday season coming up, Perplexity is going to be so great for making your holiday shopping easier. As many of y'all know, in my free time, I am a runner. I'm planning on running the LA Marathon next year, so I told Perplexity to help me find some new running shoes for the LA Marathon, and it gave me a ton of options, giving me advice for exactly what I should look for in a running shoe, comparing the highlights of the different brands of shoes, and then also giving me the option to directly buy the shoes in the app, which I think for one is so cool and two just so useful to have everything all in one place. Thanks to Perplexity for sponsoring this video. Make sure to check out Perplexity for all of your holiday shopping via the QR code on screen or in the link in my description below. Now let's get back into it. So let's talk about the current state of education for Gen Alpha. As of right now, as we know from the different videos that have been posted, mine included, the state of education for young people right now is not great. And as I mentioned in that past video, there are many reasons behind why this is, whether it be underfunding for educational programs, schools, teachers, or just other general resources, the oversight and neglect of busy parents, the educational disruption from the COVID pandemic, or the vague general boogeyman of social media and technology. There are many different scapegoats and reasons behind why the education system right now is the way it is, but the facts stand that a lot of young people, a lot of Gen Alpha, a lot of students right now are not getting the resources and the education that they deserve. And a lot of them are evidently being left behind. With about 67% of fourth graders not being proficient at reading, which is about a 2% increase from that of 2019. For a lot of public school students, due to the mass teacher shortages right now, there are much larger class sizes affecting the quality of education, education, as well as an incentivized pressure. And this I don't know for sure, but according to testimonials from teachers on TikTok, there is this pressure to push Gen Alpha, push these young students along through each grade level, regardless of if they're actually performing at said grade level or not.
A middle school teacher admitted that his students are performing at a 4th grade level and no one is doing anything about it. TikToker at QBTheDawn is a 7th grade teacher who went viral for his video expressing his frustrations with the public school system while revealing that most of his students are severely underperforming. He says almost no one is speaking up or doing anything about it and that parents don't seem to notice. And instead, these students are just being pushed through to the next grade. So while some students were able to bounce back from online learning, other students who struggled to keep up with virtual lessons are continuing to struggle today. I don't know that there's an easy solution to this issue. What can we do to support our students and ensure that they are learning at grade level?
Basically, there has been needing to be some form of reform for education to keep up with the modern challenges that the education system is facing right now, namely when it comes to teacher compensation, school funding, programming, and the likes. And while you may think someone may look at the state of education right now and be like, oh wow, that's bad. Let's try and fix it by giving these areas the resources they need to help better conditions for students, staff, and teachers. According to the new administration coming in, that does not seem like that is necessarily the prerogative. As we know, we have Donald Trump coming back into office, and with that, he has proposed as part of his Agenda 47 to dismantle the Department of Education. How that works, not a clue. I honestly did not know that could happen. But the plan clearly states as of right now, they're looking to dismantle the Department of Education, reallocating the department's responsibilities to state governments, which seems to be a trend for a lot of the points that man has been stating when it comes to other issues, which, not to get super crazy and political, but which doesn't really apply when federal law presides over state law. But regardless, the impacts of dismantling this Department of Education could possibly disrupt federal funding for public schools, as well as affecting programs that support students with disabilities or others in high need areas, effectively exacerbating the issues that are already happening in education right now for young people. Now, hearing all this may either sound spooky or like a whole lot of nothing, because I think, as is the case for a lot of people, which isn't necessarily anyone's fault, not many people really understand what the Department of Education really does for real. And I don't blame you, because I didn't fully understand what the Department of Education really did for real either until I started looking into it for this video. So according to their website, the Department of Education's mission is to promote student achievement and preparation for global competitiveness by fostering educational excellence and ensuring equal access. The department was something that Congress established back in May of 1980, strengthening the federal commitment to assuring access to equal education opportunities for every individual, to supplement and complement the efforts of states, the local school systems, and other institutions of the states, the private sector, and public nonprofit educational institutions, and basically everybody involved with education to improve the quality of education. Encourage the increased involvement of the public, parents, and students in federal education programs, promote improvements in the quality and usefulness of education through federally supported research, improve the coordination of federal education programs, improve the management of federal education activities, and improve the accountability of federal education programs to the President, Congress, and the public. Which sounds a whole lot like trying to hold education accountable and trying its best, while very flawed, to hold the commitment to equal opportunity education. Now, when it comes to the topic of funding for the Department of Education, most of schools' funding comes from the state, with about 8% coming from the Department of Education. So while the department's share of total education funding is not huge, the site states that the Department of Education works hard to get a big bang for its taxpayer-provided bucks by targeting its funds where they can do the most good, filling the federal role of a sort of emergency response system, filling in the gaps for where states and local support will falter, in the case where national needs do arise. So now that we have that baseline for what the Department of Education does, we can understand why dismantling that entire system could seem a little wild, and why it maybe just might affect a lot of things when it comes to the education of young people. But then it kind of goes further, because we have to have a conversation over Trump's cabinet pick for who he chose to be the Secretary of Education for the country. Linda McMahon. Now, if you've never heard this name before, I don't blame you. I did not either. I had no idea who this lady was, but I can tell you for one thing that I know that she is not, and that is an educator. Linda McMahon is known more for her business background than her educational experience, being the former co-founder of the WWE. Yeah, the beefy, sweaty wrestlers. I'm not really sure how the Secretary of Education for the country and the co-founder of the WWE really have a lot of transferable skills. And honestly, they don't, but like, go off. But Linda McMahon is expected to be a strong proponent of school choice and parental empowerment in the education system, which may sound like seemingly good things on the surface, but when you get down into it, it's possible that the intentions behind this maybe are not the most altruistic. Because all of these plans, again, end up reallocating a lot of public school funding to more private institutions in education, which can and will worsen the educational inequalities for people that have the money and access to go to private schools and those that don't and have to go to public schools. But let's take a quick pit stop and talk about school choice really quickly. The major focus in the education policy with the president-elect is expanding this thing called school choice, basically allowing parents to use public funds for private schooling or homeschooling, which again takes away resources from public schools, which can potentially further reduce the quality and accessibility of these services. And again, having the opportunity to send your kids to a private school does sound nice if you get some of the public funds to do so, but we also have to think critically about this, right? It sounds great on paper, but again, this is essentially defunding public schools. And we have to think critically about why people would want to do that and why people would want to remove young people, Gen Alpha, the up and coming generation, who are already falling behind from the public school system, into private schools and into home educations. This is an inference and educated guess based on other things that have been expressed to be values on what's going on with this side and what they believe education should and should not be. Private schools don't have to adhere to a certain curriculum. They create their own curriculum and guidelines for what needs to be taught, what the prerequisites are, and what you need to know to move on to the next grade. And if there were to be a check for that grand scale, it would be the Department of Education. But again, if the Department of Education is gone, where's the check? So with there being no need to have set guidelines for these schools, it really is up to the schools and states' discretion for what is taught and the way in which things are taught. So while some private schools can be really effective and really great at educating young people and in giving them an amazing education, that's not the case across the board for all private schools. Because there are and there can be plenty of private schools that choose very specific things to teach and very specific things to omit in education, especially when it comes to things like science and religion, which makes it easier. And when there is no common ground or common curriculum that kids have to know as adults, that means that the level of education and level of knowledge and the things that people know and believe are going to vary state to state and school to school, which again is already the case at certain levels, but this issue is only going to be exacerbated. And especially when there's a push for schools to take on a more patriotic, America first perspective and lens on history classes, where things like race and race relations are seen as taboo and something that we shouldn't harp on as like a bad part of history, it's not difficult to see how these ideologies and how this almost omission and alteration of certain histories can completely be passed through a generation without much pushback. People would know the full extent to a lot of things that happened in history, especially the darker things that happened in this country's history, due to the fact that they just wouldn't be taught or that wouldn't be told, or would have an idea that like it was kind of bad, but like it wasn't like that bad, which I think is still the case now in current public education, especially when it comes to topics of race and because it still to this day is very dialed down and location dependent for how much you get to learn about what actually went down in America's past, and is actually something that oftentimes gets revealed more often in things like university or college. We're able to have a more full breadth of research and information of like what actually has happened. And actually interesting that I bring that up because that's actually the next thing that they're talking about. Because also probably not a coincidence that this same administration are looking to promote more pathways to education outside of your typical 4-year college university and diving more so into things like trade schools. And again, on the surface, this looks great. It's like, oh my God, giving more people access to education. And I think going this route shows that the intention is not necessarily to give more equitable and available education. It's more so to have college education be the option that is chosen less, to get people away from going to traditional 4-year universities, as statistics show that people that tend to go to 4-year universities tend to hold different perspectives and vote a certain way, largely. Universities and colleges also encourage more critical thought, teach you how to interact more with the real world professionally, academically, as well as interact with people from around the world that are inherently different from you and your lived experience, so you can become a more thoughtful, holistic, and culturally aware human being. Not to say that any of that does not happen in trade school, but trade school is usually for a single trade and is not as holistically comprehensive as a traditional university, where you're getting a more generalized education of a lot of things and then choosing one thing to go into. And while there are likely people that are going to defend this, saying things like it's good to give parents more agency over what their kids are learning, not learning, and what schools their kids are going to, that's making a big assumption that the majority of kids have parents that are that involved and care that much generally about their kids' education, or having themselves be informed enough and aware enough to make that decision. And given the fact that a lack of parental care and attention, again, not always on the fault of the parent themselves, but more so to the system that the parents live in, where they kind of need to work first to put food on the table for these kids. For better or worse, they're not always able to be 100% in these kids' lives, constantly checking on their education when there are so many other things to maintain and keep up and uphold just to stay afloat. But it is a stretch to say that these parents that are already facing these issues are already struggling to stay tapped in with their children's education and are already facing these educational disparities are going to now magically be able to flip a switch and take on even more responsibility over their children's education. And not saying that that won't happen across the board. There are definitely a ton of parents that are really invested in their kids' education, and you can see that, but this isn't the universal fix that it's being advertised to be. And none of this is me going to bat for public schools. I want to make sure that's clear, because as I said in my last video, and as I said throughout this video, there are still a ton of issues with these schools being overfilled, underfunded, especially in the areas that need them the most. But I don't think by and large taking away even more funding is going to help that issue at all. Because as someone that growing up went to both a public and a private school, I've seen directly the difference in resources that these schools get. And the disparity in these resources makes all the difference in how these kids are able to grow up and what they're able to learn and the general opportunities for them. But I feel that the current plans and trajectory are only going to make these disparities worse. Now, finally, let's talk about how all this is going to potentially affect Generation Alpha and the youngest of Gen Z. I've been talking about this and alluding to it throughout the video, but I think these changes in education are only going to exacerbate the problem with Gen Alpha. With the shift towards privatization and reduced federal oversight, we're going to see a bunch of educational disparities between schools, between districts, between states, especially for students in disadvantaged communities. Like, this generally is not okay. It's not okay to rightfully allow a massive discrepancy in education for young people where this is already an issue across the board. Like, you thought Gen Alpha and young Gen Z can't read now. Just imagine how many kids are going to be left behind now. And this decrease in funding trickles down into all aspects of education. Like, both Gen Alpha and Gen Z are very tech savvy people. Like, tech has been integrated in all of our lives, but especially now in schools, technology is something that is fundamental for education. Like Chromebooks, iPads, smartboards, whatever, what have you. Our generation in Gen Alpha are accustomed to these technological integrations and advancements in classrooms, in schools. But when you cut public school funding, what are going to be the things that are going to be cut? The arts, the recreationals, and the tech. Then this is especially going to be a hindrance to Gen Alpha, who is even more reliant on technology than Gen Z is. So not having those tools in the classroom is really going to be a hindrance for students across the board, where most of the information that they're getting is online. Because we've already seen for a lot of districts, especially in the South, books are a hot topic and aren't always allowed in schools and in classroom settings. Like, it seems like we're just setting up young people to fail. We're setting up the younger generation. We're setting up Gen Alpha to not be able to critically think, which is scary for a multitude of reasons, but especially the way things are going, it is increasingly important to be media literate, to be able to critically think, and to be able to know how to read and write. And by robbing the younger generation of this, regardless of who is running the government, we are doing our society and we are doing our young people a giant disservice. And I strongly feel that more needs to be done about this to make education at some level standardly equitable. But yeah, those are my thoughts right now. Now I want to hear from you. What do you think about all this? Do you believe that the kids are not all right? And how do you feel about the way that Gen Alpha and Gen Z are going educationally? I'd love to hear all of your thoughts down in the comment section below. Thanks again so much for watching. If you're new, then definitely subscribe, leave a like, and follow me on my social medias here on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter at Imurgency. Thanks again, Perplexity, for sponsoring this video. Don't forget to click the link in my description to try it out. Other than that, y'all, I've been Imurgency, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.